The landlord had changed the lock while she was at work. He left her things in the hallway, then by the curb, and now they sat in the gutter while the water ran past. A folded quilt. A photo frame wrapped in a towel. A pair of warm shoes she had not had the heart to throw away. $61 in her coat pocket, and nowhere to put it to use tonight. She was 58 years old. She had paid rent on that small unit for 9 years. Then the building sold, the rent jumped, and her hours got cut, and the math stopped working no matter how many times she did it at the kitchen table. She had asked for 2 more weeks. The new owner said no. So Della stood on the sidewalk in her emerald green coat, soaked through to the skin, and she did not cry. She was too tired to cry. She looked up at the gray sky and she said the thing she had been thinking for a long time but had never let out loud. "I'm too old to be loved anymore," she whispered. The words felt true and cold. Her husband Reggie had been gone 8 years. Her daughter Nina lived 2 hours away and had a full life of her own. The world had stopped looking at women like Della a long time ago. She had made her peace with being a pair of hands that cleaned the floors and emptied the bins and went home unseen. That was when she heard the sound. A man came around the corner of the red brick building, walking fast, one hand pressed flat to his chest. He wore a plain dark coat, nothing fancy, the kind any man might wear. His face was pale and wet. He took 3 more steps, and then his knees gave out and he went down hard onto the soaked pavement. Della did not think. She dropped her bags and crossed the street. "Sir, look at me," she said, kneeling beside him. He was gasping. His lips had gone a frightening color. She put one hand under his shoulder and braced him so he would not hit his head. "You stay with me now. I've got you." His eyes found hers. He could not speak. His hand gripped her sleeve. Across the street, under the dim glow of a shop sign, 2 figures in dark hooded coats had stopped walking. They stood very still, watching. The rain blurred their faces. Della felt a cold prickle on the back of her neck, but she did not let go of the man. She would not leave him on the ground for anyone. "Help," she called toward the street. "Somebody call for help, please." A young man at the bus stop pulled out his phone and dialed. Della kept her arm steady under the stranger and spoke low and calm, the way she used to speak to Nina during a fever. Slow breaths. In and out. "You're not alone. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." The stranger's grip loosened a little. His breathing came easier. The siren grew louder down the block. The 2 hooded figures turned and walked away into the rain, and Della never learned who they were, only that for one strange moment they had seemed to want something from this falling man. The ambulance came. The medics lifted him onto the stretcher. As they wheeled him off, the man turned his head and looked at Della, soaked and kneeling in the gutter beside her 2 ruined bags, and he mouthed 2 words she could just make out. "Thank you." Then the doors closed, and he was gone, and Della was alone again on Cypress Street with no home, no plan, and the rain still coming down. She picked up her bags. She walked to the all-night diner 4 blocks away, sat in the back booth with a cup of coffee she could barely afford, and let the warmth bring feeling back to her fingers. She had saved a stranger's life and lost her own roof in the same hour, and the world did not seem to notice either one. But the world had noticed. Della just did not know it yet. Now let me ask you something before we go on, because this part matters. How many good people do you think there are out there, women like Della, who give everything they have to strangers and still go home to nothing? How many of them have we walked past without seeing? If you believe a kind heart should never go unloved, comment the word "seen" below, and subscribe so you do not miss what happens to Della next. Because what this stranger does when he learns who she is will leave you holding your breath. Stay with me. The next morning Della borrowed a phone charger from the diner, called Yolanda, and slept 4 hours on her friend's couch. Yolanda Pierce was the only person Della trusted with the truth. They had cleaned Hartwell Tower together for 6 years, side by side, two women working the night shift while the city slept. Yolanda wore a bright yellow headscarf every day, said it kept her cheerful, and she had a laugh that could fill an empty office floor. "You should have called me the second that lock turned," Yolanda said, pressing a hot plate of eggs into Della's hands. "You hear me? You are not sleeping in any diner again." "I didn't want to be a burden," Della said. "Love is not a burden," Yolanda said. "Eat." So Della stayed on the couch, and she went back to work that night, because the rent was gone but the job was all she had left, and she could not afford to lose it too. Hartwell Tower was a tall glass building downtown, 22 floors of offices owned and run by Crane Industries. Della and Yolanda cleaned floors 9 through 14. The work was hard and quiet and honest. Della took pride in it. She liked leaving a place better than she found it. The problem was Gerald Vance. Vance was the building operations manager. He wore gray suits and a sour look, and he treated the cleaning crew as if they were thieves who had not been caught yet. Over the past few months, the crew's paychecks had started coming up short. First a few hours here and there. Then whole shifts marked as not worked. When Della asked about it, Vance told her the budget had changed and she should be grateful to have a job at all. "Grateful," Yolanda muttered that night, mopping the 9th floor. "I am grateful. I am also $200 short this month and so are you." "Something is wrong with the books," Della said quietly. "I have been here 6 years. The budget did not change. He changed it." "And who do we tell?" Yolanda said. "He runs the building. He decides who works and who goes home." Della did not answer, because she did not have one. She had learned, over a long life, that being right was not the same as being heard. Near midnight, while Della emptied the bins on the 12th floor, Vance came around the corner with his clipboard. He looked at her the way he always did, like she was a smudge he wanted gone. "You touch anything in these offices," he said, "anything that is not a trash bag, and I will have you out the door and report it. We have had items go missing. Expensive items. You understand me. I have never taken a thing in my life that was not mine," Della said. Her voice was steady. 6 years here. You can check every floor I have ever cleaned. "I am watching you," Vance said, and walked off. Yolanda came around the corner with her cart. "He has it in for us," she said. "Both of us. I do not know why." Della watched the elevator doors close on Vance's gray suit, and a cold feeling settled in her chest, the same feeling she had felt on Cypress Street when the hooded figure stood watching in the rain. She could not name it. But she knew, the way you know a storm is coming before you see the clouds, that something was about to break. She finished her floor. She rode the bus back to Yolanda's couch. She lay in the dark and thought about the stranger from the rain, the man whose life she had held in her 2 hands, and she wondered, just for a moment, whether he had made it through the night. She would have her answer sooner than she thought. He came back 4 days later. Della was wiping down the long glass windows of the 11th floor lobby when the elevator chimed and a man stepped out. She did not look up at first. People came and went. Then he said her name, and she turned. It was the stranger from the storm. He looked different in good light. Tall, clean gray hair, a trimmed gray beard, calm blue eyes. He wore a plain navy sweater and slacks, nothing flashy, but he stood like a man who was used to rooms going quiet when he entered them. He had a little color back in his face now. He was alive, and he was looking at her like she was the most important person in the building. "You," she said softly. "You made it." "I made it because of you," he said. He took a slow step closer. "I have been trying to find you for 4 days. All I knew was a green coat and a kindness I did not deserve. I asked everyone. Then a security guard told me one of the night cleaners had been talking about a man who fell in the rain." Della's hands went still on the glass. "I only did what anyone would do." "No," he said. "You did what almost no one does. You crossed a street in a storm for a stranger when you had nothing left yourself. Yolanda told me about your apartment. Della felt her face grow warm. She talks too much. She loves you, the man said. That is not the same thing. He held out his hand. My name is Thomas Crane. The name landed in the quiet lobby like a stone in still water. Della knew that name. Everyone in the building knew that name. It was on the lease, on the paychecks, on the brass plate by the front door. Crane Industries. He did not just visit Hartwell Tower. He owned it. You are the owner, Della said slowly. I am the founder, Thomas said. And 4 nights ago I was a man on the ground who would have died if you had not knelt in the gutter to hold me up. The doctor said another 2 minutes without help and I would not be standing here. He paused. I owe you my life, Della. I do not say that lightly. I have spent my whole life being careful about what I owe people. You owe me nothing, Della said. I would do it again for anybody. I know, Thomas said. That is exactly why I am not going to let you say no to me. He told her, simply and plainly, that he had a house with rooms standing empty, and that there was a small clean apartment owned by his company that no one was using, fully furnished, and that it was hers for as long as she needed it, with no rent and no catch. He said it the way a man states a fact, not a favor. Della opened her mouth to refuse. She had spent her whole life refusing help so as not to be a bother. But she looked at this man who had nearly died in her arms, and she saw that telling him no would hurt him, would take from him the one thing he wanted, which was to give something back. And she remembered Reggie's voice from long ago, saying, Della, a gift refused is a wound, not a kindness. So she did not refuse. Thank you, she said, and her eyes filled. I accept. With all my heart, I accept. Thomas Crane smiled for the first time, and 10 years fell off his face. Then it is done, he said. And it is only the beginning. The apartment was on the 6th floor of a quiet building with big windows and clean white walls. There were fresh flowers on the table when Della arrived, royal blue and yellow, and a note in careful handwriting that said only, Welcome home. Rest now. T.C. Della stood in the middle of the bright room and cried, not from sadness, but from the strange feeling of being held by the world after so long of holding it up alone. Thomas did not crowd her. He was a careful man. But a week later he asked, through Yolanda, whether Della would let him cook her a meal to say thank you. Not a fancy dinner. Just a meal. Della said yes. He cooked it himself, in the kitchen of his own home, a big house that felt strangely quiet for its size. Roast chicken, green beans, warm bread. Nothing showy. He told her he had learned to cook after his wife died, because the silence of takeout boxes had been too much to bear. How long? Della asked gently. 6 years, Thomas said. Her name was Margaret. She was the best part of me. After she went, I poured everything into the company because work does not ask you how you are feeling. He looked at his plate. I think I forgot how to be a person for a while. I know that feeling, Della said. My Reggie passed 8 years back. Heart, like yours nearly did. After he was gone I kept setting 2 cups of coffee in the morning for the longest time. Just out of habit. They were quiet for a moment, 2 people who had each loved someone and lost them. Can I tell you something foolish? Della said. Please. That night in the rain, before you came around that corner, I had just said out loud that I was too old to be loved anymore. She gave a small, tired laugh. And then a man fell at my feet and I had to go love a stranger just to keep him breathing. Life has a sense of humor. Thomas set down his fork. He looked at her for a long moment. You are not too old to be loved, he said, slow and plain. You held a dying man together with your bare hands and your steady voice. You are the most alive person I have met in 6 years. Whoever taught you to think otherwise was wrong. Della did not know what to say to that. No one had spoken to her that way in a very long time. So she did the only thing she could. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand, once, and let go. It was not a grand romance. Neither of them was looking for one. It was something slower and warmer than that, two people learning each other carefully, the way you read a letter you do not want to finish too fast. She did not tell him yet about Vance, or the missing pay, or the cold feeling that something at Hartwell Tower was very wrong. She did not want to bring that ugliness into this bright clean room. But the ugliness was coming, and it would not wait much longer. It happened on a Tuesday night, in front of everyone. Della came down to the ground floor at the end of her shift to clock out. Vance was waiting at the security desk with two guards and his gray suit and a look on his face that Della would remember for a long time. "There she is," Vance said loudly, so the whole lobby could hear. "Stop her. Check her bag." The night had gone still. A few late workers stopped to watch. Yolanda, coming out of the elevator behind Della, went pale. "What is this?" Della said. "A laptop went missing from the 14th floor, Vance said. "Your floor. Your shift. We have a report and we have a thief, and I have been telling people for months that we let the wrong sort of person into this building." He pointed at her bag. "Open it." Della's hands shook, but she opened the bag and held it out. A water bottle. A folded cardigan. A photo of Reggie in a small frame. Her bus pass. $61 in an envelope, the same $61 she had carried since the night of the storm because she could not bear to spend it. "There is no laptop," Della said quietly. "There has never been a laptop. I have cleaned this building for 6 years and I have never taken so much as a paperclip." "Then why is one missing?" Vance said. "I do not know," Della said. "But it was not in my hands." A small crowd had gathered now. Della stood in the middle of it, an older woman in a maroon cardigan holding her open bag, her dead husband's photo on top, while a man in a gray suit told strangers she was a thief. She felt the old whisper come back into her chest, the voice that said she was nothing, that she was invisible, that she was too old and too poor and too tired for the world to ever take her side. She lifted her chin anyway. "Search every floor I have ever cleaned," she said, loud and clear. "Search my home. Call the police if you like. You will find nothing, because there is nothing to find. I know what I am. I am an honest woman. And no man in a gray suit gets to tell me different in front of a lobby full of people." Yolanda stepped up beside her. "She is the most honest person in this building," she said. "And you know it, Gerald. You have known it for years." Vance's face went tight. "Both of you. Suspended. Get out." And that should have been the end of it. That should have been one more time the world chose the man with the clipboard over the woman with the mop. But Della did not know that one floor up, a quiet man in a blue sweater had just stepped off the elevator, had heard every word, and had gone very, very still. "Let me stop here and ask you the hard question. How many honest people have been called thieves by someone with more power, and just had to take it because no one would stand up for them? How many times has the truth lost to a loud man in a nice suit? If you have ever been blamed for something you did not do, if you know that feeling in your chest right now, type truth in the comments so I know you are with me. Subscribe and stay close, because the man who just heard everything is about to change the whole story, and you are not going to want to look away. Here we go." "That is enough," Thomas Crane said. His voice was not loud, but it carried across the whole lobby, and every head turned. He walked to the security desk in his blue sweater, calm and certain, and he stood beside Della. Vance's mouth opened and closed. "Mr. Crane. I did not know you were in the building." "Clearly," Thomas said. He looked at Della's open bag, at the photo of Reggie on top, at the $61 in the worn envelope, and something in his jaw tightened. He turned to Vance. "This woman saved my life in the rain 4 nights before I ever knew she worked here. And you are telling a lobby full of people that she is a thief. On what proof? There is a report, Vance said. A laptop. Bring me the report, Thomas said. Bring me the serial number, the purchase record, the camera footage, and the sign-out log. Bring me all of it by tomorrow morning, or you will be explaining to the board why you publicly accused a 6-year employee with nothing in your hand but your own voice. He paused. And the suspension is lifted. For both of them. Now. The lobby was silent. Vance gathered his clipboard and walked stiffly to the elevator and was gone. Thomas turned to Della. The hard look melted off his face. Are you all right? I have had worse Tuesdays, Della said, and her voice only shook a little. But thank you. Truly. You do not thank me for telling the truth, Thomas said. Come. Both of you. Sit down. I want to hear everything. The pay, the accusations, all of it. From the start. So they sat in a quiet office, and Della and Yolanda told him everything. The cut hours. The short paychecks. The shifts marked as not worked. The whole crew quietly losing money for months while Vance told them the budget had changed. Thomas listened without one interruption. When they finished, he picked up his phone and made a single call. Daniel, he said. I need you at the tower. Tonight. Bring the financial team. We are pulling every record on the building maintenance fund going back 2 years. Yes. Tonight. Daniel Foss arrived within the hour, a sandy-haired man in a blue dress shirt who clearly knew how to read a ledger. He set up in the conference room and got to work. Meanwhile, 2 hours away, Della's daughter Nina got a phone call she did not expect. Mama, what is going on? Nina said, fear in her voice. Yolanda messaged me. She said you got accused of stealing, and now some rich man is involved, and you are living in his company apartment. Mama, who is this man? What does he want? Men like that do not just help cleaning ladies for nothing. Nina, Della said gently. Sit down and let me tell you the whole story. From the rain. And then you decide for yourself. Nina listened. She was a nurse. She had seen people at their worst and their best, and she did not trust easily, especially not a billionaire who appeared in her aging mother's life out of a storm. But she heard the calm in her mother's voice, and she said she would drive in that weekend to meet this Thomas Crane herself and look him in the eye. Good, Della said. I want you to. Bring your good judgment with you. She did not yet know that her daughter's good judgment was about to help uncover something that would change all their lives. It took Daniel Foss 3 days to find it. He laid the papers out on the conference table in neat rows, and Thomas and Della stood and looked while he walked them through it. It is simple, once you see it, Daniel said. For the last 14 months, Mr. Vance has been doing 2 things at once. First, he has been marking real cleaning shifts as not worked, then keeping the unpaid wages inside the building budget where no one would look twice. Second, he has been billing the maintenance fund for repairs and supplies that never happened. Ghost invoices. Cleaning equipment that was never bought. Repairs to floors that were never broken. Where did the money go? Thomas said quietly. Into a vendor account he controls, Daniel said. A company that exists only on paper. Over 14 months it adds up to a little over $400,000. Some of it was the wages he stole from your crew, Mrs. Harmon. Your back pay is in there. All of it. Della had to sit down. He was taking food off our tables, she said. All of us. For more than a year. And the missing laptop, Thomas asked. There was no missing laptop, Daniel said. I checked the asset log myself. Every device is accounted for. He made it up. My guess is he saw you and Mrs. Pierce starting to ask questions about the pay, and he wanted you both gone before you looked too closely. A loud accusation is a good way to push someone out the door. The room was quiet for a moment. So when he called me a thief in front of that whole lobby, Della said slowly, he was the thief. Yes, Thomas said. He was. Thomas did not shout. He did not throw anything. He was a man who had built something real over a long life, and he knew that the strongest answer to a man like Vance was not anger. It was daylight and the law. We do this correctly, Thomas said. No shortcuts. Daniel, put together a complete file. Every invoice, every ghost shift, every dollar. We bring it to the full board. We let the auditors confirm it on the record. Then the board votes, and we hand the file to the proper authorities, and we let the courts do their work. And the first thing, before any of that, is this. He turned to Della. Every cleaner on that crew gets their stolen wages returned, in full, with interest, this week. No one waits. Thomas, Della said. That is a great deal of money. It is their money, Thomas said simply. It was always their money. I am only sending it home. That Friday, Della and Yolanda and the rest of the night crew each received an envelope with every dollar that had been quietly taken from them over 14 months, plus interest, plus a written apology from Crane Industries signed by Thomas himself. Yolanda cried. 3 of the others did too. One man who had been skipping meals to pay for his daughter's medicine sat down on a bucket and put his face in his hands. Della watched her co-workers get back what was theirs, and she thought her heart might burst from it. She had spent her whole life believing the world only took from people like her. For the first time in a long time, she watched it give something back. And the strangest part of the story had not even arrived yet. Nina drove in that weekend, ready to be suspicious, and went home a believer. She met Thomas at the Bright apartment, and she did exactly what she had promised. She looked him in the eye and asked him plainly what he wanted from her mother. Nothing, Thomas said. I owe her my life, and I am trying to be a person worth the second chance she gave me. That is all. If she ever asked me to step out of her life, I would, today, no questions. But I hope she does not. Nina watched him while he said it, watched his hands, watched his face, the way nurses learn to watch people. And she believed him. But it was Nina who, by pure accident, opened the door to the thing none of them saw coming. She had brought a box of her father's old things to show her mother, photographs mostly, the kind that pile up in a closet for years. One evening the 3 of them sat looking through them, Della and Nina and Thomas, sharing the small history of a good man who had been gone 8 years. Thomas picked up one photo and went completely still. It was an old picture, the colors faded. A younger Reggie Harmon, maybe 35, stood outside a bus station in a heavy winter coat, his arm around a thin, shivering young man who could not have been more than 20. The young man wore Reggie's spare coat, 2 sizes too big, and held a paper bag of food, and looked at the camera like a person who had just been pulled out of cold water. Della, Thomas said, and his voice was not quite steady. Where was this taken? Greyhound Station, downtown, winter of long ago, Della said. Reggie used to spend his lunch breaks down there. He could not stand to see a person go hungry or cold. He gave away more coats than I could count. Said his daddy taught him that you never know which cold man is going to grow up to do something good, so you warm them all. She smiled at the memory. Why? Thomas turned the photo around so they could see the thin young man's face. Because that is me, he said. The room went silent. I was 20 years old, Thomas said slowly. I had nothing. My family had fallen apart, I had run out of money 2 states from home, and I was sleeping in that bus station because it was warm. I was 3 days from giving up on everything. And one afternoon a man on his lunch break sat down next to me, asked me my name, listened to my whole sorry story, and then he took the coat off the back of his own car, bought me a hot meal, and put $40 and a bus ticket in my hand. Reggie, Della whispered. I never knew his last name, Thomas said. He would not take anything in return. He just said one thing to me. He said, you do not pay me back. You pay it forward. Find a cold person someday and warm them up. He shook my hand and he walked back to work and I never saw him again. Thomas looked at the photo, then at Della, and his eyes were wet. I built everything I have on top of that afternoon. Every good thing I ever did, I did because a stranger named Reggie warmed me up when I was freezing. I have been trying to pass it forward for 40 years, looking for the cold person he told me to find. He set the photo down with shaking hands. And then one night in the rain, he said, a woman crossed a street to warm up a dying stranger. And it was his wife. The board met on a Thursday morning in the top-floor conference room of Hartwell Tower. It was done exactly the way Thomas had promised, in full daylight, by the book. Daniel Foss presented the complete file. The outside auditors confirmed every number on the record. The ghost vendor account, the false invoices, the stolen wages, the made-up laptop, all of it laid out plain for the whole board to see. Gerald Vance sat at the end of the table and watched his own scheme spread out in front of him page by page. He had no answer. There was no answer to give. The board did not raise their voices. They did not need to. When the presentation was done, the chairwoman simply asked for a vote. The vote was to remove Gerald Vance from his position effective immediately, to refer the full file to the proper authorities for prosecution, and to order Vance to repay every dollar in restitution. The vote was unanimous. Vance gathered his things in silence. Security walked him out the same lobby where he had once stood and called Della a thief. This time the lobby watched him go. The law would take it from there, slowly and properly, the way it should. No one had to raise a hand. The truth, written down and confirmed and voted on, had been enough. That evening, Thomas asked Della to walk with him along the river path near her bright new apartment. The sky was clear. The water was calm. They walked slowly, two people in no hurry. "There is something I need to say to you," Thomas said, "and I have been turning it over for days." "Say it," Della said. 40 years ago your husband saved my life with a coat and a meal, and he asked for nothing but that I pass it on. A month ago you saved my life again with your 2 hands in the rain, and you asked for nothing either. The same heart, twice, 2 generations of the same family, both times pulling me back from the edge of the cold. He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Della, you told me in the rain that you were too old to be loved. I have been waiting for the right moment to tell you how wrong that is. You come from a family that has spent its whole life loving strangers it owed nothing. You are not too old to be loved. You are the most worthy of love of anyone I have ever met." Della's eyes filled. "Thomas. I am not asking you for anything tonight," he said gently. "I only want you to know that the cold young man your husband warmed up grew into an old man who would be honored to spend whatever years he has left making sure you are never cold again. Whenever you are ready. Or never, if that is your choice. But I needed you to know." Della looked at this man, this living piece of her husband's kindness come back to find her after 40 years, and she felt something she had given up on long ago. She felt seen. She felt chosen. She felt, for the first time since Reggie, like a woman who still had a whole life in front of her. "Reggie would have liked you," she said softly. "He always did know which cold men were going to grow up to do something good." Spring came to Brookfield Heights, and Thomas Crane did the unthinkable. He did not buy Della a mansion or drape her in jewels, because he had learned, from a man at a bus station long ago, that the best gifts are the ones that warm other people too. Instead, he stood before a room full of cameras and reporters and announced the founding of the Reggie Harmon Foundation, named for the late husband of Della Harmon, with a starting gift of $50 million. Its purpose was simple. It would pay back wages stolen from low-wage workers across the city. It would give coats and warm meals and bus fare to people sleeping in stations and shelters, no questions asked. And it would be run, in its first year, by a woman who understood better than anyone what it meant to be cold and unseen and then warmed by a stranger's hand. Della stood at the front of that room in a royal blue dress, 58 years old, beautiful, no longer invisible, and she told the story of the man who had warmed a freezing boy at a bus station and asked for nothing but that he pass it on. Yolanda stood beside her in bright yellow, now the shift lead at Hartwell Tower with a real raise and a real office. Nina stood there too, in coral, no longer suspicious of the kind man who looked at her mother like she hung the moon. Daniel Foss, now head of operations for the whole company, sat in the front row and clapped until his hands hurt. And Gerald Vance was where the law had put him, paying back every dollar he had stolen, the slow and proper end to a long quiet theft. That night, after the cameras were gone, Della sat with Thomas in the quiet of her bright apartment, and she took out a thing she had carried in her purse for 8 years and never opened. It was a sealed envelope. On the front, in Reggie's handwriting, were the words, "For Della, to open on the day you feel forgotten." "I never opened it," Della said. "Because for 8 years I was too afraid. I thought the day I felt forgotten would be the worst day of my life, and I did not want to read his words on the worst day." She turned the envelope over in her hands. "But I do not feel forgotten anymore. I feel found. So I think it is finally safe to read." She opened it. Inside was a single page in Reggie's careful hand. She read it out loud, her voice soft. "My Della. If you are reading this, then I am gone and you are sad, and somewhere in that sadness you have started to believe that your time for love has passed you by. So let me tell you what I know that you do not. Kindness is a debt the world always pays back, just never on time and never the way you expect. You spent your life warming cold people for me. One day the world is going to send a cold person back to warm you. When he comes, do not say no. Do not tell him you are too old. Take the coat. Take the meal. Take the love. You earned it 40 years before you ever knew it. Yours, always, in this life and whatever comes after, Reggie." Della lowered the page. Her hand was shaking. Thomas had gone very still beside her, because he had recognized something in those words, something he had heard before, on a cold afternoon at a bus station 40 years ago. "Della," he said quietly. "There is a date on the back of that page. Look." She turned it over. There was a date in Reggie's hand. And below the date, for more words she had never seen, written as if her husband had somehow known, all those years ago, exactly who would one day be sitting in this bright room beside his wife. She read them. Her breath caught. She looked up at Thomas with wide eyes. And what those 4 words said, and what Della and Thomas did the very next morning because of them, is a story so unexpected that you will not believe it until you see it for yourself.